When I tried to blame everyone else, nothing changed. When I tried to look everywhere else, nothing changed. I started talking to other people who were going through similar situations. And when I would listen to them, I was hearing them talk about me, in their own situation. I was like, oh, they were complaining about their spouses. I'm like, wait, that's that's where I was. So eventually I said, the only person I can control is me.
Hello and welcome to the Inspire Cafe podcast, where we bring you conversations and inspirational stories of people overcoming adversity and then how they came out of it transformed with a positive outlook or outcome. People are incredibly resilient and we need to hear more of their stories. This is Kathy Della Torre. Ryan Greene says he got his strength and resolve from his mother and that she was a great role model. He explained his mother had sickle cell anemia and wasn't supposed to live past the age of 6. She ended up raising both him and his sister and got to see Ryan get married. Ryan then later had his own challenges. His mother passed away, he got divorced, and he also struggled with depression. How was he supposed to help others when he was going through his own challenges? Well, he decided he needed to go back and learn from his mother again. And that was to find his life purpose. And that's when everything fell into place. He explains finding your life purpose isn't just about you, it's about how to pay it forward and also help others. Today, Ryan is the founder of Greenhouse Media. He's an author of 6 books. He's a speaker, trainer, coach, and the host of the Passionpreneurs podcast. We'll have links to Ryan and his podcast on the inspirecafe.com. And make sure to listen until the end of the interview as Ryan shares how you can gain access to a freebie offer he's giving out. Okay, let's get back to Ryan's story. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm very excited to talk to you. I read your latest book, Becoming a Passionpreneur, and I have a lot of questions. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and generally what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you again for even having me on, and I appreciate you taking a look at my book. Again, my name is Ryan C. Greene, and my goal and my mission is simply to help people break free of mediocre living, to go after their dreams, to really live their life to their full purpose, their full potential, and to make passion-driven revenue streams, to make a living doing what they love. So I've been an author. I've been writing books since 2005. Host a podcast as well as I do public speaking. So everything I do is all about trying to get others to realize that there is more in life for them and they can go after that. And I just try to give them the tools and the resources to help them do that. Okay.
You said something that sparked a question for me. So you said that your mission is to help people get out of their mediocre lives. I'm paraphrasing here. Mm-hmm. Why that topic? I'm very curious about this. So why focus on helping people not continue to live mediocre lives?
That's a great question. And for me, it's personal because it's been my life. I talk about in my book, and I'm sure people can relate, when you were a high school senior, we all had our memory books and there was a line or a question in there that asked, what did you want to be when you grew up? And, I look back at my high school memory book not too long ago, a few years ago, and it said then that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a business owner. And that's what I became. And so many of us have goals and we had dreams that are something that we wanted to do that for whatever reason, good or bad, we walked away from. We didn't pursue. And, Pew Research in 2018 did a poll that showed that almost 70% of employees are either hate their job or they're disengaged from the work that they do. So that's 7 out of 10 people who are working, doing something that they hate doing. And I really am all about trying to help people find that joy and that peace. I found peace in my life. I'm at peace most when I'm doing what I was purposed to do, when I'm doing something that I'm passionate about doing, not when I'm at a job that I hate because I need to pay the bills. And I believe that if we can get more people not quitting their jobs, because, and I talk about that in my book, I'm not telling anyone to quit your jobs and things like that. But if you could just find joy in your work, we'd be more happy. We'd be able to, the road rage, people wouldn't be so upset in the morning sitting in the highway, in traffic because you're going to a job you hate. I just think that we can have a lot better interactions with people. People would be more fulfilled, all because they're doing something they were purposed to do. My mom passed away when she was 51, and she passed away full of things that she wanted to do once she retired from the federal government. She had worked 33 years in the federal government, but she was too young to retire. Well, she didn't know that she wasn't even going to live that long to retire. And I just thought about all the things that she wanted to do and all the things that she didn't do, and how many other people are like her waiting for the time to be right. I come to people, the time is never going to be right. It's never going to be perfect, but you got to go and do it anyway. Live your life now. And that's kind of the motivating force behind everything that I do and why I kind of focus where I focus.
Yeah, it's so true. And I totally agree with you that I think majority of people are disengaged or unhappy with their jobs. And so they just stick in doing the rut.
Yeah.
They create this groove, they create their own rut, and they're too fearful to change. And they usually don't change or make a change until there's a crisis. Something happens in their life that kind of jolts them to become awake and figure out, okay, maybe this isn't the real purpose of my life to be continuing to do this. So was there a crisis for you to get you to change and discontinue working that job that you hated?
I was always pursuing it. So there wasn't a crisis that made me change course, but there was a crisis that made me say, okay, I need to actually do the work. I need to actually get focused on it. And it was ironically, going back to the same time my mother passed. At that time, I was working for a major corporation, and we were on strike. We were on strike as employees trying to get better, whatever people go on strike for. We were on strike, and my mom passed away during that time. And when I went back to work, so we weren't getting paid, and I found out that the job could have given me bereavement pay, but because we were on strike, they chose not to. They wanted to get back at all of us who were on strike. They didn't want to give us the bereavement pay. And that just never sat with me right. It really made me feel, okay, I can't let anyone else have that much control over my life, my peace, my financial security anymore. So it was at that point that I realized that, corporate America wasn't going to be for me. I'd have to go out there and really be the captain of my own ship when it comes to finances and security for my family. So that's really what triggered me to really start to get serious about doing the work to becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay. So yeah, well, that's an eye opener, getting on the chopping block, or at least fearing that you're going to be on the chopping block even to get you to move. So, okay, let me get back to how I first got introduced to you. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I recently had read an article that featured you, and it read, "My business started out of a desire to tell my story my way. When my first book was written in 2004, I didn't want to go through the process of getting hundreds of rejection letters from publishers, so I created my own media company. I sent one query letter to myself, and I said yes. My goal has always been to create media with a purpose by sharing stories that both educate and entertain." Okay, so I burst out laughing when I read about that. Did you really write yourself that letter of yes?
Okay, I didn't physically write the letter, but I gave myself permission. And that's what I tell people all the time. Give yourself permission to succeed. So what I did was, I didn't want to go through the rigmarole of telling people, having people rather tell me that my story wasn't important, my story wasn't good enough, I wasn't famous enough. So I said, if I'm going to go out and write a book, I'm not just going to write a book, I'm going to start a business. And I'm not just going to start a business for me, I'm going to start a business that gives opportunities for other authors as well. So I want to make sure I formulated my company where I was publishing other authors too. So yeah, it was a point when I was like, yeah, I'm going to go and do this, and I'm going to make sure that my story gets told my way. And there was a lot of rocky, there's a lot of bumps along the way trying to do it yourself, but I wanted to make sure that my story got told, and that's really what started it all.
Okay, so you had the goal in mind even before you published your first book, that you were going to be there helping others publish theirs.
Yes, absolutely. And I tell people all the time, any business venture, start with the end in mind. You may not be there when you start, but you have to know what you want to do, because, we talked about crises earlier. You don't ever want to be in a situation where an opportunity comes up and you're not prepared to take advantage of it. So, plan, if it's just you, but still plan, know rather what your plan is, so that you can make sure that your actions all fit in line with that plan, so that you're never caught off guard. You never want to have to say no to an opportunity just because you weren't ready.
Right, right. Okay. Okay, so let's jump to another section. In another one of your books, Creating a Better You, you talk about your own personal experience with adversity and struggle. And you talk about there was a time you said that between 2009 and 2012, you basically were living a life as a zombie. Can you share with us a little bit about what was going on in your life and why you say that you were living life as a zombie?
Hmm. Absolutely. When I started my company in 2004, I'd written my first book, Successes in Your Hand. Came out in 2005. In 2008, I released my second book, my Little Black Book of Leadership. So things were going well. I was starting to see that climb. I was doing speaking everywhere. And then my personal life, took a hit. I went through a separation and a divorce. And for those 4 years, I quit. I was going through that divorce. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer the world. I was battling my own depression and just feeling unworthy. So I quit. I quit on my business because at that time it was about me trying to simply survive in life. I was trying to figure out how do I, where am I going to work? How am I going to make enough money on my own? And how am I going to make sure that, I'm still in my kids' lives and those kind of things. I never wanted to be divorced. And, here it is. Life is different now. How am I going to go out and tell people how to be successful when I just failed at home? So those are all the kind of obstacles I was facing. And I was ready to just give up and just be what I call an average person and work that 9 to 5. I was resolved to that was going to be my life. But what I found out was that purpose, when your purpose for something bigger, purpose doesn't let you run away forever. Purpose will give you a time to go out there and feel, have your pity party, regroup.
Yeah, right.
Because emotions are
That's
real.
good.
Emotions you go through that. And it's like, okay, now it's time to get up. Now it's time to tell your story and help people again. And that's when I, started saying this. Listen, well, I'll backtrack a little bit. When I was ready to be that average person, I wasn't happy. So I couldn't find something that made me happy, made me content, made me say, okay, this is what I'll sit down and do for the rest of my life. So I said, well, who am I? And I had to regain that footing and say, well, if I'm going to go back to doing what I was purposed to do, then how am I going to do that? Because what I did before wasn't good enough. And that's where Create a Better You came from. When I talk about the 12 essential elements to creating a better life, it's my story. All of my books are my story first.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading in your book, like when you were going through your depression, and you talk about a realization that you had. And if I could, I'll just read a statement from your book. It says, I had a choice to wallow in my sorrows and continue to blame my pain on everyone else, or I could get up, take responsibility for the only person I could control, and become a better me. How did you get to that realization?
First of all, let me just thank you for reading that, because that sounded so much better when you read it than when I wrote it. I'm like, oh, did I write that? So first of all, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We just impressed you all over again about yourself.
So I appreciate that. But to the question, how I got to that point, because when I tried to blame everyone else, nothing changed. When I tried to look everywhere else, nothing changed. I started talking to other people who were going through similar situations. And when I would listen to them, I was hearing them talk about me, in their own situation. I was like, oh, they were complaining about their spouses. I'm like, wait, that's where I was. So eventually I said, like I said in the book, the only person I can control is me. And if I know I can do my best to make a better me, then whatever else happens around me is just, I can't control that, but I can control myself. And that's why I call it Create a Better You, because I want people to take that accountability and know that we can't control everyone else that we complain about. We got to decide when you're going to say, listen, it's up to me to take care of these things and look at what I bring to the table. I wrote that during a time when people were really in the spirit of celebrating haters and talking about everyone hating on you and this and that. I was like, half the time people aren't hating on you because they dislike you. It's just that you haven't given them something to believe in, and I've never been one to celebrate haters, and I'm not motivated by haters, because that makes me a hater, and that makes me motivated by hurting someone. I don't want to do that. So my thing was simply to make sure that I can put myself in the best position to be the best me, to try to, live out the best version of the purpose of my life.
Wow. Okay. So you coach people, right?
Yes.
Okay. How do you coach a person who seems to have trouble getting this concept that it's all up to them?
First and foremost, and early on in my books, I wasn't like this. I was trying to be what I saw everyone else be, be the nice, politically correct, make you feel good kind of coach that everyone would like. But that wasn't necessarily my style in real life. And I had to accept that. And what I found is that my authenticity and is what started to draw the right clients. I read a book, man, the author escapes me right now, but it's called Book Yourself Solid. And in that book, he talks about knowing your client and making sure that you are getting the kind of client that you want for your business. And early on, a lot of entrepreneurs, we are so focused on just trying to get a check. We're trying to get everybody to come in. And it's not till you mature in business to say that every client isn't for me. Every person that's looking for a coach, I may not be that best coach for them. So I had to be authentic in who I was, let people know that I'll crack a joke and we'll have fun. I'm a straight shooter. I'm big on accountability. You're going to have to accept that if I tell you something that I reckon that I see in you, that you're willing to accept that, not take it personal, not think I'm trying to be mean, and be willing to do the work, because that's what it's going to take if you want to be one of my clients. And sometimes you have to tell people maybe it just isn't a good fit for you and I. Early on, I'll ask them, do I have your permission to coach you? I'll ask them, can I offer some advice? And that way it kind of eases it a little bit, but and they know that you're coming from a coaching perspective. But sometimes you have to get to the point where they're either going to follow or you're going to say, this isn't a good fit. So I don't have a magic answer to make someone change who doesn't want to change. It's just a matter to attract those right clients and not being afraid to tell certain people, well, this is the system. The system doesn't change for every individual. The individuals have to put themselves into this system. And if this system isn't going to work for you, then hey, go out and find someone else. It's no problem.
Mm-hmm. This kind of leads into my next question. You mentioned in your book that you are not a motivator, you are a coach.
Yes.
What's the difference?
The motivator, and I talk about it in the book, and people have, maybe people have been victims of it as well. A motivator, you're in the room and they're saying all the great things and you're rah, 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 and you're excited and you walk outside and you run to your car and you're happy, you're ready to take on the world. You get to the car and you realize you have no content. You have no real tangible things to go with. They just got you excited. They pumped you up. It's like the cheerleader on the side of the field that they're getting you excited, but they're not playing the game.
Okay.
Whereas the coach is really going to be out there and make the plays, give you the game plan, show you the steps to take, really help you get better. So you may get motivated by a coach, but my main thing is that, if you're looking for someone to come out there and get the crowd all excited and riled up, that's out of my lane. There's some people who do that really well. But if you want content, training, real coaching, real tangible tools and tips and guidance and accountability, then that's where a coach comes in. And that's what I like to fashion myself as.
Okay, good distinction. And I guess also that motivation is an intrinsic thing. It comes from within ourselves. It's like you talk about finding your why. Why are you doing this? It's like when it's in one of your acronyms, I think. What inspires you? What gets you out of bed? And unless you find that thing, because nobody can find that for you or create it for you. It has to come from within. Okay. Well, let's talk about that acronym. It's called STUPID goals. They're not SMART goals, they're stupid goals. We all know the SMART goals, the acronym, but you created something called the STUPID goals. First of all, why did you call that stupid? And then let's just talk about a couple of them.
Great. I called them stupid, and it's funny because I didn't go in saying, hey, let me find what's the opposite of smart. Stupid. Let me figure out how this can fit. I really started out trying to figure out why don't SMART goals always work. Anyone who's been to, any kind of leadership development, any kind of training has probably heard of SMART goals, the specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, time-sensitive goals. We probably set them and we probably all failed them. And I was trying to figure out what elements were missing, what's missing from that. And going back to even earlier, we talked about starting with the end in mind. So I came up with stupid goals. And the S in stupid stands for sacrifice, because the sacrifice, many times when we're setting goals, the reason people don't go after their goals is because they come up to a point where there's a sacrifice that has to be made that they didn't think about or they didn't consider.
That is so common.
Yeah, right.
I think like when I was coaching, like, what do you mean I have to get up early or get to work on time? What do you mean?
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that if you don't weigh that sacrifice in the beginning, then you're gonna mess up. So, something as simple as maybe it is getting up early, or maybe it's, okay, this is the goal, then we're gonna have to sacrifice we have to sacrifice date nights. We have to sacrifice a new car. But what happens so often is that people don't think about the sacrifices. They get in the middle of grinding for the goal and then realize that the sacrifices are too much. They're not ready to make them, or you haven't communicated them properly with the other people. You haven't told your kids, I'm going to miss a recital this year because I'm going to be out here building this business. So if you don't think about that sacrifice up front and be honest with yourself, are you willing to make those sacrifices? The people who are going to be affected by those sacrifices, are they on board? Have you properly communicated with them what to expect? That kind of thing it will get you tripped up when you're going after these goals. So the biggest thing is understanding that sacrifice and understand what it's going to take to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Now, I don't want to go through all of them because I want people to go get your book.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We don't let the whole cat out of the bag, just a little paw. But let me ask you this, Ryan, you do a lot. I mean, your Greenhouse Media company has like a spider web, and it's going into all different directions, and you are involved in many, many different businesses, it seems like. You've gone through your down period that you were talking about, getting divorced and going through some years of depression. Where do you think you got your perseverance from? Where did that come from? What drove Ryan to keep on going and just not giving up, and then maybe just staying in that dead-end job or staying in that mindset?
Right.
Where do you think that came from?
There's two things that I contribute to that. First and foremost was my mom. She raised my sister and I, single mom. She had sickle cell anemia, so I saw her fight, her life to take care of us, to sacrifice for us. So I got it from her. I saw her fight. So that was already in me. But then I go back to also my why. I talk about the why. In all my books, I mention having a strong why to some degree. And I'm always motivated by family. I'm motivated by legacy. I want to make sure that when I'm gone, people know I was here. And when I say people know I was here, I don't necessarily mean being famous. I don't care about fame, but I want lives to have been touched and changed. And they know that because of the work I did, someone else's life was better. I think that we all owe, that's our, I'm going to mess up somebody's prominent saying where they said service is the rent we pay for being on earth or something like that. Someone said something close to that. But, that's kind of how I govern my life, is that I feel like we all deserve to make other people's lives better. Those who are blessed to have more, blessed to be more, blessed to have figured some part of life out, owe it to those who don't have it. And it doesn't mean that we always have to charge $1,000 for a workshop to give it to people. So that's what motivates me. And that's kind of where that drive comes from. It's just, I didn't ask for it. It's just what was put in me, that I always have to make sure that I'm impacting somebody else. Yeah,
you did talk about that in your book too, how, like you were alluding to, your mother, she wasn't supposed to live past 6 years old, from what I understand.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And so it was your understanding that her life's purpose was to raise you 2 kids and get you going on your life's purpose.
Right.
And she lived long enough to see you get married.
Yeah.
And now you've discovered your life purpose and you're carrying that out.
And I'll just jump in on this part and this is kind of going a different direction, but knowing that also help heal and deal with the death. And so many people when we have death of a loved one, it can impact us one of 2 ways. We can shut down totally, or we can use it to motivate us to do more. And for me, looking at, that impact and that purpose, and saying that, look, my mom, while of course I would love to have her here for another 100 years, look at what she went through and the story that she had and the legacy that she was able to leave in her short time, and using that and knowing that it's not just about me. What I do is also her legacy. And that will help, kind of help continue to push forward too. So I think a lot of people who deal with trying to overcome loss of loved ones, you can try to shift your focus and do the work for them. Use them as your motivation, not as the reason why you can't do something.
Right. Yeah. People, our loved ones are great motivators. Yes, you're so correct. Let me ask you this. For the people who are, let's say they're depressed because they're living in their mundane jobs, their dead-end jobs, but they're fearful of making a change, what would you like to say to them?
I'll say it like I say it to everyone else. If you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always gotten. If you're unhappy with the way things are, what's it going to hurt to try something different? If you fail and you be right back where you are, then so what? You're already there. But instead of focusing on what if it doesn't work, start focusing on what if it does work. It's not the person who's failed that, is the fool. It's the person who sits there and never tries, who has a dream but is always scared of what other people are going to think about them. I think, and that's one of the biggest things I think that stops so many of us from pursuing dreams, not because we don't want them, not because we don't believe that we can do it. We're afraid of what other people are going to say about us. Are they going to think I'm crazy for going after something? Are they going to think I'm crazy if I fail? But once you can get over that and say, listen, I'm going after what I'm going after, whether you like it or not, and that's it. That freedom opens you up to be able to go after it without worrying about what other people are going to say and think about you.
That's so true. I remember telling some friends I was going to start a podcast, and they kind of like tilted their head like a little Labrador and said, right. Huh? Yeah, that is so true. We do worry about what others think as opposed to what we know we're capable of.
And then people will say stuff to you like, well, how's your little podcast going? And it's like, no. Don't try to downplay my accomplishments with little microaggressions, like little you'll have an international podcast. A podcast online, internet is international. You have an international podcast. Yes. Anyone in any country can listen to your podcast, but people will sit there and look at you crazy because you want to go out there and use your voice to help other people.
Yep. That's so true. Yep. Ryan, if people are interested in connecting with you, learning more about your services, what you do, what you got to offer, how can they find you?
Thank you. They can find me online at ryancgreene.com, and that's Greene with the E. But I would also like to tell anyone who's interested in getting more information on the stupid goals we started talking about, I have a free audio download that they can all get, just courtesy for being listeners on your show, by texting the word GOALS, GOALS, to 614-333-0338. They can get a free download, learn all about how to set stupid goals, setting goals that are impossible for you to quit. You can go get that for free just for listening to the show. Thanks for taking time out to learn who I am today. All your listeners can go ahead and get that, and they'll be able to get in touch with me that way as well. Excellent.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining me here on this podcast, this international podcast.
Absolutely.
and sharing what you've gone through and all of the great books that you're writing and publishing. So thank you so much.
I want to thank you so much for reaching out, having me, and I really appreciate you even reading the books. I've been on a lot of shows, and the hosts have not taken the time to even actually read the books. Obviously, it's clear to me you have. I appreciate that. I love what you're doing with the Inspire Cafe podcast. I wish you all the best. And I'll reach out to you so I can have you on my podcast real soon, too.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Inspire Cafe podcast. You'll find the show at theinspirecafe.com, and also we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe and share with your friends. Until our next conversation, thank you for listening.